Welcome back to Keeping It Real. We are speaking with Robert Buckler. He's got all kinds of letters behind his name. I'm not sure what all of them are. Bachelor of Arts, Masters of Education. So you're a teacher as well?
Yes.
And RCM, what does that stand for?
Registered Condominium Manager.
Well, that would make sense. And you are a condominium consultant. Your company is Beredan Management and Consulting, Inc. So, and you're also a realtor,
correct,
by the way, with Century 21 Heritage Group, Limited Brokerage. So now you're very outspoken on some of the issues with respect to the Condominium Act. I know once I was a condo director, we basically flew by the seat of our pants. And I suppose there are some real pitfalls associated with that. I saw a recent interview, you were talking about some major fraud cases and
yes. There's been a lot of changes in the condominium market, as everyone knows. You look everywhere and there's a tower going up. So over the last 10 plus years since the last act came into play in 2001, there's many new kind of condos, mixed use, commercial and hotels, industrial, many different types of condos have been invented, which weren't really considered when the former act came into play. So over time, many things needed to be looked at, and many owners and investors and the realtor community have sort of seen that change. And over time also there's been areas where things have not gone right, and within the management community as well. You don't need to be licensed. This is an area where I feel very passionate about.
As a property manager?
Yeah, as a property manager for a large asset, you were involved on an annual basis with the budgets of anywhere from several $100,000 to several $1 million. And unfortunately, there was a case last year where a management company was involved in several, allegedly involved in fraudulent activities related to those condo corporations, and there are about 8 or 9 buildings were definitely involved, and are still trying to get out of that mess that they were in. So thankfully, the government started hearing about these cases, and it was a major case that sort of awoke them, that finally they said we have to open up the Condominium Act for review because of the changing condominium place. And also with over 500,000 units, I think it's at 550,000 units, representing a very big amount of people in terms of voters, it's also a large group. So they said, yes, we need to reopen the Condominium Act formally, so that the community, the condo community, both the owners, the board members, and other stakeholders, being the service providers, can make recommendations. And that process is ongoing right now. The act was formally opened up in early June, and the government outlined a process that they really wanted to be inclusive as much as possible, to attract people that had a lot to say. So the process is actually coming to a close for anyone to make a submission actually this coming Friday. So anyone that is open to make a submission, saying this is what we think, this aspect should be changed, and so on.
So you're saying the act hasn't been changed or touched since
2001, yes.
2001,
right.
So that's a long time.
Yeah, so since then, everyone knows how, the condo purchases and construction has represented a huge portion of new homes, and for good reason, given urbanization, given the intensification that the province is supporting, given the affordability, given where people want to live, so that's. And talking about seniors, where a lot of seniors want to live, in terms of having to have less issues and worries about, worry about snow removal and landscaping and all the rest. So they move into a home where if they want to take a vacation for 3 months or 6 months down south, they have that ability without having the same amount of worries they had with the freehold home.
Right.
So,
how did you get involved in this sort of work?
Well, I managed properties for quite a few years. I changed careers about 10 years ago, and when I started in property management as a condominium manager, and it's a very dynamic area with lots to do and lots of issues to deal with on a daily basis. You really never know what's going to happen. Really enjoyed the work. and saw a lot of opportunities within the management world. So about 3.5 years ago, I launched my own consulting company. I work with developers to help them with the first-year budget and work with the lawyers to help with the legal framework for that community. And I think it's interesting to say, and a lot of people believe, that the condo world and living is like the fourth level of government, because you really do have a government in place with the board and the structure in place with the legal framework. So as I was observing the market, I decided to launch into several areas of the condominium world. One was working with developers. One was working with management companies, as they have very specific needs, and they don't. In some cases, if they're a smaller firm, they need help from outside. So I do a variety of projects with them. And another area is condo corporations directly. There are when a large condo corporation, whether it be one site with multiple condos in corporations in place, they may not be happy with their current management. And this is unfortunately sometimes how I'm brought in to help them find a new management company. As you mentioned when you said at the outset, you were new to being a board member, and part of that is learning what the management does and what your role is and so on, where unfortunately there really is no licensing for management. So that one management can be fantastic, one manager or management company, and the next, unfortunately, if that person gets transferred to another site, the next manager may be formally a security guard or formally a superintendent, and obviously doesn't have the skill set or knowledge or education to really serve that community as well as he or she should. So I'm brought in to help do a selection process for the new management.
Okay, so in addition to licensing, which you're recommending, you also believe that condo directors should be required to take a course.
Right. Well, the Condo Act's very clear on this, that the mandate of the board is to manage the affairs of the corporation. That's actually directly from the Condominium Act. But what does that really mean? And as a new board member, what does that entail? So there's a lot of aspects to it, whether it be financial responsibility, whether it be the physical building itself, whether it be enforcement of the rules and the legal framework that exists, and also just making sure that everything runs operationally well. Now, I'm not saying that the board has to execute that, but even if they have a manager who's been hired, they have to know that what their responsibilities are, so that the right decisions are made, so that they're working on behalf of all the other owners.
Right. Is there normally some oversight of the board of directors? I mean, I remember that, I joined this board of my townhouse condominium. This was over 10 years ago, and it was like a coup going on, like people were ousting other people, and it seemed like there was a lot of incompetence going on, and we were the bosses. So, I mean, I don't know who. I guess we were in charge ourselves, but
yeah, it depends on the community, depends on the size of the property, and obviously, townhouse complex has less involvement with the owners. But in a high-rise situation, the condo corporation is very much involved in the day-to-day life of owners, and whether it be just basically, cleaning the carpets or making sure, the lobby's well maintained, or the security guards on staff, and all these other issues. It's a lot. So you're right, there is a lot to learn. And in terms of oversight, at the moment, there is no oversight.
Right.
You can have a criminal record and be on a board of directors of a condo corporation. There could be charges pending against you for fraud, and you still would be eligible to stand for election as a board member. The threshold is very limited. You can basically be 18 years of age. You can you're financially have some financial knowledge, and you're not bankrupt. That's really what the Condo Act says right now in terms of what the minimum standard is. And the condo documents themselves might go steps further, that you have to be a resident of the property, that you can't miss certain number of meetings, you lose. And you also can't have outstanding arrears for 90 days or less. Like the Act says 90, but the condo docs might say less.
You also do some work as a court-appointed administrator. You want to tell us about that?
Yes, unfortunately, there are older buildings where the decisions that have been made in the past have come to haunt the current owners, whether that be not budgeting enough money for the day-to-day operating fund or for the reserve. There's really there's no condo police out there. So if a board wants to be a rogue board, unfortunately, the manager too can't say, no, I can't do that. There's no one overseeing the manager to say, well, we can't do what you're asking. If they refuse, they just lose the contract. They're going to be terminated. So when I put my realtor hat on, if a client asks me to do something that's in contravention of my obligations as a realtor, I'm going to have to say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. It would jeopardize my license. So as a manager, similarly, there's really no protection for the management community right now, and that's why I believe licensing is really important. So unfortunately, over time, these bad decisions have been made. For example, when the HST came in a couple of years ago, that affected condominium budgets very heavily. So it varied, but depending on the community, it was a 5 or 6% increase right off the bat, just because many expenses were now subject to that extra tax. So similarly, the reserve fund was also needed to be increased. So as an example, the board had to make a tough decision based on management's recommendations to increase the budget just for that expense. And over time, over many years, if those kind of increases were not implemented, they didn't follow the reserve fund study that was properly done, or there wasn't one done every 3 years as required. Unfortunately, they're hit with a deficit. There's lots of monies lacking in the reserve fund. So that's when the board has to say, look, we have to be in compliance. The auditor is going to say it's a qualified financial statement, which is not a good thing.
Right.
So they would have to then say, we have to do the right things for our community. We have to catch up. We have to special assess. We have to collect the money to make sure our community is healthy.
So how is it that the court, you would be appointed
right? So leading up to all these types of unfortunate issues, the board has a struggle. Some owners saying, no, I don't want to pay more maintenance fees. We want to get rid of you because you're not doing what we want, which is keep our maintenance fees low. So unfortunately, that's one area, and that's probably the most common reason why a board has resistance from their neighbors, and through that.
So the owners would do what? Overthrow the board?
Yeah, there's a mechanism to say to where the board is not doing the right thing, that the owners can requisition a meeting to have them removed. But if that happens several times over, let's say, a year, the manager can't function, the board can't function.
Right.
So in that case, that escalates it to saying, look, there's a remedy in the Condominium Act to go to the court and say, we want a third party to take over the board authority. Until such time as the board can be reestablished.
Can function.
Can function and reestablish slowly back to where it should be.
Right, so you've gotten involved in some of those cases?
Yes, I'm a court-appointed administrator in 2 communities right now, and it takes time to calm the community down and to get them back on track, and to
unfortunately
make some very difficult decisions that are financially difficult for the community. But in order
like what, for example?
To do a special assessment.
Oh, okay. So people are trying to avoid, I guess, certain expenses. It's always about money. Right?
It is about money. Yes.
At the end of the day, and then certain expenses are required.
Yes, repairs need to be done. Reserve fund studies need to be updated. Repairs can't be deferred because it affects the safety of the community.
Right.
And of course, from a real estate perspective, these type of situations, the status certificate being the legal document that realtors must, is a crucial part of the transaction. It's a condition for legal review. These communities are definitely have sort of red flags against them.
Well, and I guess then selling the properties becomes, even more of a challenge, right? Or people when you if somebody's trying to sell their unit, and they're in a situation where the board has been overthrown, and now there's a court-appointed administrator. I mean, how does that affect the market?
Yeah, it does affect the value of the units. Definitely, it does make make it difficult, a little more difficult to sell. But the key is that, I get calls from lawyers quite frequently because they never heard of this concept or they've never come across a property like this. So I explain it to them that they're on the road back to recovery.
Right,
And
right.
that's the key. I'm there for a year or two, depending on the scenario, so that the board can take over, and I mentor them very, very closely so that they're ready and they don't repeat the pitfalls of the past.
Yes, right.
So that they're on the road back to
recovery.
So
that's probably the best thing. I mean, in some of these
in
cases
the short term,
that you're brought in as an independent person, you know what's required, you know the act, and short-term pain, I guess they say.
Short-term pain, yes, and working very closely with the management team, with the the legal counsel for the corporation, with the auditor and the engineers, and the team of professionals. That's really key. It's a team approach. I'm definitely counting on them very much, just like the board of directors does.
Right. Well, there you have it, people. If you're in a situation, if you're a real estate agent watching this, or you're somebody who's, I guess you could be living in a condominium, and if you see that there are serious problems, they need to be dealt with. So you can either help them now, or if they can't fix it, the courts may bring you in. So better to be proactive, I suppose. Yeah. Robert Buckler, condominium consultant, Beredan.com. Give him a call. He will help you out. Thanks very much, Robert. Appreciate you being here today. We're going to take a very short break. We're going to be back with my old friend, Hugh Barnsley, to talk about the small commercial end of the market in particular. And hang in there. We'll be back in just a minute.